Trump has repeatedly denied all allegations of personal and company wrongdoing. Attorneys for James' office have indicated during multiple hearings in the last month that the investigation is nearing its conclusion, and that it may lead to an enforcement action in the near future. They have not elaborated on what enforcement might be. There's clearly been a substantial amount of evidence amassed that could support the filing of an enforcement proceeding, although the final determination on filing that proceeding has yet to be made, Amr said during a May 13 hearing in a federal lawsuit filed by Trump to try to halt James. Two attorneys from James' office remain assigned to a separate Manhattan District Attorney's Office criminal probe of Trump and his company, for which a special grand jury recently expired. That investigation led in July 2021 to criminal fraud and tax evasion charges against the Trump Organization and its CFO, Alan Weissel. In January, they filed motions to dismiss the criminal case. In a response filing made public Monday, a prosecutor urged a New York judge to move forward with the case. The Manhattan criminal probe has seen apparent turmoil since the February resignations of two lead prosecutors, Carrie Dunn and Mark Pomerantz, who quit less than 2 months after newly elected Manhattan A. Alvin Bragg took office. Bragg succeeded Cyrus Vance Jr., who launched the investigation in August 2018. In Pomerantz's resignation letter, which was published in the New York Times, he wrote that Vance concluded that the facts warranted prosecution of Trump, but that Bragg had reached the decision not to seek criminal charges at the Bragg said in an April 7 statement that the criminal investigation is continuing and his investigators and prosecutors are exploring evidence not previously explored. The dethroned king is losing his Midas touch. Donald Trump's endorsees have struggled to get a majority in GOP primaries so far this year. Campaign reporters react slowly when unorthodox candidates upend the verities of politics. The rise of Donald Trump and the unexpected appeal of Bernie Sanders in 2016 are prime illustrations of the tendency by the press corps to assume that every election resembles the prior. But the media can be equally slow to recognize that the emperor has no clothes. Although it is too soon to know for sure, and hope can cloud judgment, a case can be made that Trump, yes, the all-powerful Donald Trump, is beginning to lose cachet among Republican primary voters, even if his views have been embraced by the candidates running in 2022. Tuesday's Georgia Republican primaries will almost certainly help demystify Trump. His favorite target, incumbent GOP Governor Brian Kemp, is cruising to a double-digit victory over Trump's anointed challenger, former Senator David Perdue. In every poll since early April, Kemp has crossed the 50% threshold needed to avoid a runoff. Even more than Kemp, Brad Raffensperger should be doomed if the GOP was still fully entranced by Trump. The Georgia Secretary of State, an otherwise orthodox Republican, held firm during Trump's infamous phone call to find 11,780 votes and overturn Joe Biden's victory while polling for his race has been scarce. Raffensperger is likely to run strongly enough to head into a June 15 runoff against Trump's chosen candidate and stolen election zealot, U.S. Representative Jody Isse. What is equally telling is that leading Republican officials in Georgia, now the ultimate swing state, have almost all endorsed Kemp despite Trump's rage at the governor. As Patricia Murphy, the political columnist for the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, recently noted, there was a time in Georgia when Republicans were too scared of Trump's retribution to do anything that might anger. In the race for governor, at least, those days are over. While reporters are obsessively keeping track of Trump's batting average with his endorsements in GOP primaries, they have, for the most part, missed a consistent pattern in these Trumpified candidates who have received the official hands-on blessing from Mar-a-Lago tend to be limited to around 1/3 of the vote. That can sometimes result in a plurality that will propel someone to the general election in a crowded primary race but isn't exactly evidence of a resounding victory. J.D. Vance won his Ohio Senate primary with 32%. In Pennsylvania, Mimtaz, the TV doctor, is locked in a still undecided Senate race with 31%. Janice McGeachin, whom Trump endorsed for governor, was walloped in the Idaho primary by incumbent Brad Little. McGeachin limped home with 32% of the vote. Madison Cawthorn, who is unlikely to be invited to a congressional orgy ever again, lost his North Carolina House primary with, wait for it, 32% of the vote. And two recent Georgia polls put Purdue at 30 and 28%. Maybe these numbers are a coincidence. And it is true that in some of these races, particularly the Ohio Senate primary, almost all the major candidates vie to come across as Trump can walk on water zealots. One more caveat: without the Trump endorsement, it is hard to imagine that Cawthorn, who may have set the all-time first-term congressional record for scandal, would have even won 1/5 of the vote for election. But there are also hints that the Republican romance with the defrocked president has its limits. A surprisingly high 43% of Republicans in an early May NBC News poll said it was time to look forward to a new party leader rather than Trump. This fits with a late April Washington Post ABC News poll that found that 34% of self-identified Republicans believe that the GOP should not follow Trump's lead in the future. In similar fashion, only 44% of Republican voters in a new CBS News poll want to make Trump's favorite cause, refighting the 2020 election, a key issue. This below-the-surface Trump skepticism is an echo of 2016. It's easily forgotten that the reality TV star became the de facto GOP nominee after he had won only about 40% of the delegates. And even that figure was inflated by the Republican love of winner-take-all primaries to artificially create an early decision. The current glimmers of dissent among the Republican rank and file tend to be overshadowed by the religious passion with which most Republican officeholders genuflect in Trump's direction. When the 45th president endorsed her opponent in the South Carolina primary, Representative Nancy Mace filmed a video in front of Trump Tower in New York proclaiming her abject loyalty. A New York Times study revealed that almost half of Republican legislators in 9 swing states have tried to overturn aspects of the 2020 election. And in Pennsylvania, Douglas Mastriano, who plotted to have the state legislature overturn Joe Biden's 2020 victory, romped home in the May 17 Republican gubernatorial primary with 44%. True, Trump did endorse Mastriano, but only on the eve of the primary, when his victory was all but assured. None of this is to deny the Republican lurch to the extreme right and the wild popularity of conspiracy theories and nutcase politics. It is telling that 66% of Republicans, in a new Gallup poll, believe that the pandemic is over, even as COVID cases are climbing. But there is a difference between the Republican contagion of Trumpian beliefs and a passion for another Trump term in the White House. Politics is almost invariably about the future. But Trump, who will never psychologically accept defeat, is permanently mired in November 2020. As the Georgia primaries are likely to demonstrate, sometimes the circus moves on and the chief clown is left behind where the big top used to stand.